I'm excited to introduce our next guest, Shannon Kenitz. She is the Executive Director of International Hyperbaric Association, but more importantly, she is the mother of two beautiful daughters named Grace and Lily. Thank you so much for being here.
Oh, thank you for having me. I'm so excited.
Well, I have known you for, goodness, well over a decade.
Yes.
And your story has inspired thousands upon thousands upon thousands of families. So for those of you that have not seen, and I don't know who hasn't seen your story, but for those of them that haven't, can we talk about, your story? It's so remarkable.
Yeah, Grace, she certainly is amazing.
What a perfect name for her.
Right, and we didn't even know it when we named her, so that we were going to have the complications that we did. So
let's back up. Let's talk about, she was born.
She was born. Didn't know anything was wrong. Took her home in the normal amount of time. And without having her home within like a couple weeks, I noticed that she wasn't doing a lot of tracking. When I would look at her, it was like she was looking through me instead of at me, and just was not doing much, wasn't latching on when I was trying to breastfeed.
And she was your second child.
And she was my second daughter. And I was an older mom, didn't have my first daughter till I was 30, my second at 32. And so I knew things. I knew something was wrong, and it took me almost 6 months before the doctors were finally like listening to me that something was wrong. And I took her to a ophthalmologist first, because I was saying that she wasn't tracking. So they sent me to an ophthalmologist and a neurologist in the same day. But I ended up going to the ophthalmologist first, and Grace did this eye rolling that she normally does with her eyes backwards. And he asked me, "Is that what you see all the time?" And I said, "Yeah." And he said, "Well, I think that those are seizures." And so instead of letting us drive to the hospital, they called an ambulance. They took us by ambulance to the hospital. We get there. She gets into the emergency room, and like within an hour, we were rushed up to the ICU. And the physicians came out and said, "Your daughter is having seizures, and she's having about 200 to 300 seizures every 20 to 30 minutes." So that whole time I had her home, and she had the eye rolling, they were seizures, and they were gone untreated. So we got into the hospital, and what I thought was going to be a simple case of, okay, she has epilepsy. And I'm not saying epilepsy is simple, but it's something that is treatable with seizure medicine, and people live normal lives with epilepsy. So I'm like, okay, but none of the seizure medicine was working. And next thing I know, they're wanting to put her on a ventilator. Her heart rate started going all over the place. She was not gaining weight. So what we thought was going to be like 3 weeks in the hospital, getting her seizure medicines regulated to her body, turned into 3 years of being in the hospital.
And what was her prognosis at that time?
We finally got a diagnosis when she was 1.5 years. We were at Mayo Clinic having a brain biopsy done on her. Now, by this time, Grace had already had like 3 muscle biopsies, a brain biopsies. She had been kept under a heat lamp for her temperature, was unable to sit up, talk, walk. She had a feeding tube, and she was dying right before my eyes. And we were there they thought she had Batten's disease. The only way to test it is through a brain biopsy. We got there, had the brain biopsy done. While we were there, we got the results of her muscle biopsy, and she tested positive for a very rare mitochondrial gene defect. And she has mitochondrial cytochrome C reductase deficiency. And at that time, there was only 5 kids reported with this disease, and they all had passed away before the age of 2, and Grace was 1.5 years. So, my mind, when we got the diagnosis, I thought, okay, we have a diagnosis. Now we can fix it. But the prognosis was death. It was that she was dying. So once we got the diagnosis, the physicians told us to go home and to make her comfortable and let her live her last, few days at home with us. And something just, as a mom, told me that I couldn't let that happen, because they couldn't tell me why. Like, okay, we have this disease, but how do you know there's not something out there that will help her? Especially since it's so rare, how would you really know? And so I just started doing a lot of research. And then our case kind of hit national news because the state had won the rights to turn her life support off. And tons of parents reached out to me and said, "You should try hyperbaric therapy for her. My child has cerebral palsy, has autism, and hyperbarics is working for our kids." And so I kept doing a lot of research on it, and I ended up pulling her out of the hospital and taking her to a treatment center in Florida and started hyperbaric therapy. And it literally saved not only her life, but it saved our family's life. Because today, my daughter is now going to be 20 years old. She walks, she runs, she swims on her own, she bikes, but most importantly, she knows I'm her mom. And that was the whole goal. I wanted Grace to know that I loved her before I let her go, and like understand what that meant. Like I wanted her to know that she was really loved.
And you didn't have to let her go.
And I didn't have to let her go.
Making me cry, my goodness.
I know, it's like, it's crazy because I've told this story so many times and I can't help it. I try and I'm like, I'm not going to cry this time. I'm not going to cry. But when I think about what Hyperbarics did, not only for Grace, but for my family, because I don't know what kind of mom I would have been to Lily. You never get over, you never get over the loss of a child. It's worse than anything. Any death, worse than a spouse death, is your child dying. And being a psychologist, I knew that, and I just didn't know how it would be. So I'm so incredibly blessed and lucky that not only did it save her life, but it saved my life and Lily's life, and we have our family.
And does she still use the chamber?
She does. We have a chamber at home now, and she's been using her home chamber now for over 10 years. And she still loves it. She goes in it every day. She asks for it. She'll come home from swimming and be like, Mama, chamber, and she goes in it. And I know it makes her feel good because, it decreases inflammation in your body. And I know she has a lot of inflammation in her gut and in her brain. And so it's really bringing that inflammation down, allowing her to have speech. Now she's talking. She can say 2 to 3 words in a sentence now. But as far as her cognition, her receptive language is huge. Like she understands everything, but we're still struggling with that expressive language, but we're getting there. I mean, she's now, doing those 2 to 3 words, where before it was just like Mama cookie, or, Mama night night. Now it's like Mama I night night, or I love you, she's saying, which, I never thought she'd ever say, so those little things that we get, and you have a special needs son, and that we take any little thing that we can get, even though we always want more. Anything that we get is huge for us, because it isn't necessarily about, how long you live. It's about the quality of your life. And, you want your child to be happy. You want your child to engage and to have friends, and Grace has friends. She has a birthday party. She has about 30 kids that come to her birthday party, kids that have been a part of her life since kindergarten. And now they're off to college, but they still come back. Aww. Every year they come back and go to her party.
Well, for those people that don't know what hyperbarics are, can we talk a little bit about what is that?
Yeah, so hyperbarics is when you go under pressure and we're forcing oxygen into your cells on a cellular level, and it gets into your blood and your blood plasma, and it's decreasing the inflammation that you have in your body, and it's affecting the mitochondria. Now, that's what's so interesting, like over the years, is that people are starting now to see how important it is for the mitochondria and the mitochondrial cells. So that's what's been really huge for me, is I knew that it worked. And, Grace has a mitochondrial disease where a lot of kids have mitochondrial dysfunction, or adults have mitochondrial dysfunction, and it's working on that. And so everything that we've talked about, especially like on this cruise, has been really related to the core cellular level things, such as the mitochondrial. So it's basically forcing that oxygen into the cells on a cellular level, and the only way you can do that is by going under pressure. And that's where the chamber comes in, where you go into the chamber and it takes you to 1.3, and it forces that oxygen into your cells and gets it to where it needs to be.
And what is a chamber? I mean, obviously I know what a chamber is.
So a chamber is like, it's
you
like
get into it,
you get in very easy. It's a double zipper, so you can treat yourself. The chamber, like when I first started, I went to a clinic and did sessions. I paid $200 a session. I paid $80,000 in hyperbarics before I ended up learning about the portable home chambers, which has been just a lifesaver, obviously, for me, because Grace has had over 5,000 treatments and she continues to get better with it. So I obviously could never afford to continue to go, out of state for her treatment. So you just go inside of it, you zip yourself in, and
so just for those that don't know, it's kind of like a rectangular thing.
Yeah, it's like long, like
and
6 feet.
Yep, and it inflates into kind of like a dome kind of, or like a somewhat dome kind of shape. You zip yourself in.
Yeah, you zip yourself in and you just lay there. It automatically takes you to the pressure. It's a safeguarded. All you need to do is push one button and it takes you there. And then when you get out, you do treatment usually 60 to 90 minutes, depending on what the doctor prescribes for you. And then after that, you just turn the button and you zip yourself and you get out.
And so you can either have these treatments in a clinic, or you can rent a
Yes, you
chamber.
can rent a chamber. You can have them in your clinic, or you can buy them.
And where does somebody know, like, what chamber? Do they just Google it, or what chambers do you
recommend?
recommend?
I recommend people always look around. Definitely go to our website, ihausa.org. We have a lot of chamber manufacturers that our board recommends. There are chambers out there that Sometimes they're a little cheaper. Families buy them, but they necessarily aren't the best chambers. They break down and the families aren't able to get their money back. And I always hate to see that. So definitely contact us and we can guide you in the right direction and guide you to a physician and to somebody that's, an expert in hyperbaric. So we make sure that you're getting the right chamber and the right pressure and the right dose of oxygen when you're doing the hyperbaric. So you can start out with us. We use OxyHealth brand. That's what my board of directors, IHA, recommends as far as the portable chambers, because they have the safest record. They're FDA compliant and so forth. But more than happy, to refer people out to different things. So.
And so, when you're looking at doctors, are you looking? Is there certain doctors that you recommend?
We have a whole list of doctors. You can actually go to another organization that I run. It's called the Medical Academy of Pediatrics and Special Needs, MAPS. And you can go to that site and you can click on a MAPS physician. And I'm guaranteed probably most every one of those MAPS physicians have a hyperbaric chamber in their clinic.
And that's the medmaps.org.
Yeah, medmaps.org.
Now, for those families out there that, maybe they just got the diagnosis, and it could be most likely if they're looking at our site, they're most likely are getting the diagnosis of autism. They could be getting a diagnosis of many different things, as we know. They might feel hopeless and helpless. What advice can you give them?
I would just say, just never give up. Just never give up hope. I have a website, shannonandgrace.com, and I tell families, go to that website, look at Grace's story from the time she was on life support to where she is today. There's a lot of other stories on that website that can give you hope. Your organization is giving hope to families and doing so much, and I thank you for that. Because without organizations like you guys, we would not, be where we're at, and you're helping a lot of families. So you're a great resource, and, thank you for all you do. But you can go to those websites and, but most of all, surround yourself with positive people. The negative people in your life, you don't need them right now. Even if they're your family, your mom, your dad, your grandparent, your brother and sister, there are many people I had to let go of in my life, until I got to where I needed to be with Grace. And then they came back into my life. So remember, you're responsible for you, yourself, and your child. And if that means that you have to eliminate certain people from your life for a certain amount of time, then that's okay, because it's your job as a parent or someone taking care of a loved one to get that person better,
Absolutely.
and don't worry about all that unnecessary drama that if they were meant to be in your life, they'll come back into your life.
Absolutely.
So, but just never give up hope, ever.
I think that's the key. Never give up hope. And, we met because of this journey.
Yes.
And you've inspired me so much. You were one of the first people I'd seen. And I cried and cried and cried. And I watched Grace just do better and better and better. So.
Well, thank you. And hope is my favorite word. And I love the fact that it's Autism Hope Alliance and everything that you do, Kristen. You've done amazing things. You have helped thousands of parents out there yourself. So, thank you for all you do. I really, really appreciate it.
Just make me cry this whole interview. Well, thank you so much, Shannon, for giving us the time. And thank you for everything you do.
Absolutely. Thank you.